Sean, thank you for meeting with us today and telling us your story for those who are viewing Who is My Neighbor? And you've had quite an interesting life and an interesting story. So thank you for taking your time today.
My pleasure. I'm excited.
Sean, when you were 13 years old, you were diagnosed with cancer. And I'd like for you to tell those who are watching this, this video what your experience was.
I can't exactly say it was a fun experience, but it was something that I think changed my life. And the whole thing started, I was 13, 8th grade, playing basketball. And normally I would do the pegboard, which is a board with holes and pegs. You know, I climb up there. But for some reason, the teacher didn't want to go get the pegs. And it was during recess after lunch, and I decided to play basketball instead. And I came down after layup. I could hear the ligaments and tendons in my knee just kind of snapping. And I hobbled over to the gym stage, and I just kind of rested there for a while. I prayed to get home, and got home. My knee was the size of a grapefruit, so swollen, and Mom and Dad knew something was wrong. Took me to the doctor. They put me in an immobilizer, but eventually, because of that knee injury, they diagnosed me with advanced stage 4 Hodgkin's lymphoma. And as a 13-year-old, the doctors told my parents, hey, your son only has 3 months to live. You know, not exactly something anyone wants to go through, because my friends are out having a great time with their lives. You know, I'm now, because of the medicine and everything, 60 pounds overweight, bald from head to toe, trying to figure out what's important in life. And it wasn't what my friends thought was important, like the nicest shoes, the coolest hairstyles. You know, I'm happy I have hair. But I was worried about my life and what was of value to me. You know, it wasn't about, in my mind, the petty things like the newest shoes. I could care less.
So as a 13-year-old, did you recognize the significance of this, thinking to yourself, yeah, I could potentially be dead in 3 months?
You know, I think I didn't fully understand the ramifications of the first cancer because I was so young, and everything happened so quickly. I didn't really fully grasp what was happening to me. You know, as a 13-year-old, I don't think any teenager that young, or any kid that young, fully grasps what life is. You know, great, I might die. What does that mean? I just knew that my life was on pause. My friends were out doing a bunch of fun stuff. They were in sports. My life was on hold. And I think my main focus was becoming normal again. And I also kept telling myself that I wasn't focused on dying. I was focused on living.
Did you ever hit a point where you thought, oh my goodness, I could die, and it affected you tremendously?
This may sound weird, but I do remember actually a couple stories. First one, I remember sitting on the side of my bed, and right when I was waking up, I remember looking off to the corner of my eyes, where my head was laying on my pillow. I just saw a bunch of hair. And that was when my hair was all falling out because of the chemotherapy. Yeah. And I immediately ran into the bathroom. I was looking in the mirror thinking, all right, you know, where's it coming from? Maybe I can comb it over, maybe I can do something. But I was legitimately scared. And I knew it was inevitable, so I eventually hopped in the shower, and every time I'd wash my hair and bring my hands down, they were covered in hair, and everything, it was all falling out. And I collapsed to the floor, and I ended up crying and just pulling chunks out of the hair, or out of the drain so the water could go down. That was when I think it really struck me and really hit me that something was wrong. Because over time, you know, I kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger from the prednisone, but it wasn't an overnight thing. You know, this happened overnight, and it was in my face. It was happening right here, right now. Another time was when, let's say I was always treated on the 7th floor of the hospital. So the nurses, the doctors, they all became my family. And one time that floor was full, and I remember being put on a different floor, getting my treatments, and my mom and dad tried to keep pushing for me to get into the 7th floor. And eventually a room did open up. They put me in that room, and it was in the wintertime, and a rainbow was coming into the little courtyard outside. And I remember looking at my mom and saying, everything's going to be all right, isn't it? So when something was different there, I was a little nervous, a little scared, but when everything got back to quote-unquote normal, you know, I'm a big believer in signs. That was a big sign. I was like, everything's going to be all right.
Oh, that's great. So you came out of chemo, lost your hair, gained a lot of weight, and then you started to recover.
Eventually I was diagnosed, or I was placed in remission. So
You're placed in remission.
yeah, a year and a half, I think, of treatments. I was placed in remission, and like I said, I was 60 pounds overweight, all from head to toe, and the doctor said, okay, you're cured, you're in remission.
Okay. And then how long were you in remission?
In remission for, I want to say about a year.
Okay.
You know, not much longer than a year and a half. And then I was going in for a checkup for the first cancer when they found a second cancer.
Tell me about that experience.
That was, so in one day I remember going in for the checkup for the first cancer, Hodgkin's, and then they found, in process 24 hours, they found a tumor on an x-ray, they did a needle biopsy, they took out a lymph node, they put in a Hickman catheter, which is like a permanent IV, they cracked open my ribs, took out the tumor, put in a drainage tube, and started chemotherapy. And that happened in less than one day.
Oh my goodness.
And this time around, the doctors diagnosed with a type of cancer that affects 3 out of 1 million people with a prognosis of 6%.
Was it related to the lymphoma cancer at all?
It was completely unrelated to the lymphoma, and it was also completely unrelated to the treatments. I was actually diagnosed with 2 primary cancers, and no one in the world's ever been diagnosed with Hodgkin's and Askins sarcoma before. The chances of me surviving both cancers is equivalent to winning the lottery 4 times in a row with the same numbers.
And so now you're a little older now, a little
bit.
wiser. Has it sunk in yet that now, wow, the probability is bad for me?
The second time around, I just knew that I went through the first one. I didn't want to go through another one.
Okay.
You know, because I knew I was going to lose my friends. I knew I was going to lose my hair. I knew I was going to lose my life. And this time around, the treatments were actually so harsh. The doctors, every time I was in for a treatment, they put me in a medically induced coma. So I don't even remember being 16 years old, except for the 1 month of radiation therapy that I had, where they just bombarded my upper right lung with radiation.
And so how long were you actually in an induced coma?
It was on and off. So for a lot of times when people get treated for cancer, the chemotherapy cycle, I was in Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. That would be half a treatment, half a cycle. And then I'd be released from the hospital to have my body recover. You know, I'd have to get my platelet counts, red blood cells back up, because the medicine might kill me if I didn't raise that blood count. Then I go back in Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. That would be 1 cycle. So every time I was in the hospital for that length of time, they would give me something to not even remember it, because the treatments were so bad.
Wow. So you come out of your second bout of cancer. You're now 16 years old.
Almost 17.
Almost 17 years old. A year of fighting it, chemo and constant doctor care. Tell me, when you started to come out of it, did you have a fear that this is just never going to go away?
You know, I don't know if I ever had a fear of it not going away, but when I did start coming out of it, you know, it was kind of like an alcoholic's moment of clarity. You know, everything just kind of lifted, and my brain was not cloudy anymore, and I just realized that, you know, I've been given the gift of life for the second time, well, third time now. I'm going to take advantage of it. You know, because even at such a young age, I realized our lives can be taken from us at any moment. We don't know.
Which is quite unusual for a young person. Young people generally think they're immortal. They know they're going to die, but they don't have that clarity of thought that I am mortal and I could pass on. So how did that change you as a youth?
I think it changed me because I was more focused on living. I was more focused on things that were important to me. You know, I never got caught up in the cliques. I never got caught up in trying to be popular. And I also never got caught up in trying to be the best. I just tried to be my best. You know, because every day after the treatments, I just try to improve myself a little bit more every day, which is why I think, you know, I'm in the position I am now. But when my friends were out chasing girls, collecting baseball cards, and worrying about trivial things, you know, like I said earlier, the newest Nike shoes, whatever that might be, I could care less. You know, I was focused on what was really important and focused on my personal values. I didn't let other people bother me, and I never lived a life someone else wanted me to live.
Now you've done a lot in terms of helping people who have gone through similar situations. Did that happen right as a youth, as a teenager, or was there a time period where you were trying to figure out what you were going to do in your life? When did that clarity come in terms of this is my mission?
There was definitely a moment in time when it hit me, and it wasn't after I graduated high school, because I went to a small high school, lived in a small town. Like, everybody knew my business, and I was known as Cancer Boy. You know, I went to college, and I relived my high school years. I turned into Belushi from Animal House. I had a great time with my life. Graduated with a pathetic GPA, but then took the GREs and was accepted into a number of master's and doctoral programs. That's when it hit me, when I decided, okay, well, you know, I've been given this gift of life and everything I've done with it. How can I help other people? For the next, after I was in remission from when I was 16, 17 years old, say for the next 4 or 5 years, I didn't even think about cancer. You know, I just didn't want it to be a part of my life. And when I was finally in Jacksonville, Florida, you know, thousands of miles away from my home in Ohio, I took some time off and just looked at myself in the mirror. I was like, you know, what do you want? You know, I'm sure some 4-letter words came out, cussing at myself, like, what the hell do you want? You know, who are you? Because I didn't know. I didn't have that time in high school to actually think about the future, because my future was the next day sometimes. So then, that was the moment when I was just looking at myself in the mirror, like, what do you want? Like, I've been through 2 cancers, it changed my life. How can I give back and help other people who are going through the same thing?
So what were the first steps you took? You had this kind of moment of enlightenment, but it's hard to know, okay, what do I do to help? So how did you figure out, how do I give back?
My initial thought was, maybe I can run from LA to New York and visit hospitals along the way and share my survivorship story with some patients. Realized that's a lot of running. That's a lot of training. So I just kept thinking bigger and bigger and bigger. And at the time, I think I was reading a book on Everest. And it kind of just hit me. I was like, well, the largest platform in the world to scream hope. You know, why not try to climb Mount Everest? And I found that no cancer survivor, I did some research with my brother, no cancer survivor had ever climbed Everest before, and I figured, why not me? Why not for the right reasons? And why not use that to help other people?
And so was that the first peak that you summited?
Yeah.
Everest?
Yep.
You went for the biggest and the baddest.
I figured the rest would be downhill after that. Right? I do not recommend that.
And were you the first?
First cancer survivor to summit Everest, yeah.
And so with one functioning lung, how did you do it? I know there's not a lot of oxygen up at 29,000 feet.
I think it was a combination of mental prowess, you know, mental strength, and just physical conditioning. You know, whether you believe you can or you can't, you're right. And if you start off, and if I started off with the notion of, hey, I don't know if I can do this, that doubt would sit there and fester. And I think I just eliminated that completely. I'm a big proponent and believer of the mind-body connection. And oftentimes I think you have to see it, or you have to believe it before you can see it. And I think that's what I did. And I did a lot of visualization, because every night I went to bed, I actually closed my eyes, and I pictured myself on top, and I could smell the ozone, I could feel the air blowing by my face, I could hear the styrofoam crunching of the snow under my feet. You know, so in my mind I was already there.
Yeah.
And I was already successful. So that way, whenever I encountered any obstacle, it would never be enough to stop me. It would never be enough to make me quit. It would only be enough to slow me down and frustrate me, but not to the point of stopping.
So you made it to the top of. So you made it to the top of Everest, and so you've conquered the unconquerable. And did you decide, well, I want to do all the other summits at that point in time, or where did that take you?
You know, I think I came down from the mountain, took some time off. You know, I ate a lot of pizza. I think I lost 30 pounds in the mountain. I came home, I relaxed, I just started reflecting on everything, and I really loved it. I loved the climbing. I loved the symbolism in climbing, because everybody's climbing their own Everest. It seems like everyone in life has this insurmountable obstacle in their way, and they just don't know how to approach it. You know, but if you break it down into little chunks, everything's doable. You know, people freak out over, they get overwhelmed because the project is too big, or the mountain's too big, or they have too much stuff on their to-do list, or they don't even know how to start their to-do list, whatever it might be. I And I wanted to continue on and climb the highest mountain on every continent and literally reach around the world to give people hope.
How long did it take you to climb the highest 7 summits in all of the continents?
I want to say it took me 6 years, because I was on track to get them done in 5 years, but Denali up in Alaska took me 3 attempts. I fell 100 feet the first time. Second time we ran out of food. It was minus 55 as a high with 60-mile-an-hour winds.
Wow.
The third time I went up there, it was absolutely pristine and beautiful.
So you conquer the 7 summits, and then you ask yourself, what's next?
Everybody like, what's next? What's next? Well, there's something. There was something that I always wanted to do. I remember laying in the hospital and watching the Hawaii Ironman triathlon on TV, and I made a pact with myself: if I ever got better, if I survived, I was going to finish that race. So I went and I trained and completed the world's most difficult race.
Wow.
After that, then I decided, okay, well, there's this thing called the Grand Slam. It's called the Explorers or the Adventures Grand Slam, which I personally still think it sounds like a Denny's breakfast platter. But it's the 7 summits, highest mountain in every continent, and the North and South Poles. And I went to the South Pole a couple years ago, and just recently went to the North Pole.
And when did you get back from the North Pole?
End of April 2017.
How cold was it up there?
It was bitter cold. I've never experienced cold like that before. It was 80 below with 90% humidity. Which I didn't even think about, because up there you're walking on a glacier. You're walking on the frozen ocean. That's why it's so humid.
So in the middle of all of this adventure, you start a nonprofit organization to not only give inspiration, but to help from a financial perspective others who are struggling. Tell us about that.
Well, the Cancer Climber Association was founded by my brother and I in 2001. And our initial goal was to fund cancer research, but there's so many people out there doing that, and it takes forever for money to get down the pipeline and actually help people. So we wanted to do something here, something now, and we now give away adventure support grants to cancer survivors who can go out and do some amazing things. So for example, Kilimanjaro, we always give a free trip to a cancer survivor to go over and climb Kilimanjaro with us. And the people who go, say in 2018, raise funds for somebody to go in 2019. So it's kind of a pay it forward type thing, and we're going to do the same thing with Everest starting this year. Our ultimate goal, however, is to have this mobile camp that tours around the country and unfolds to 6,700 square feet. It's like a semi-truck. Pulls up to Children's Hospital parking lot, unfolds, and underneath this huge dome there's going to be a high ropes course, movie theater, classroom, game room, cafeteria, and a 2,000 square foot turf area where the kids can set up camp.
So in the middle of climbing mountains and running a nonprofit organization, you're also writing books.
Writing books, keynote speaking,
Yeah.
all over. So I just need to work on cloning.
So yeah, exactly. And so my understanding is the first book that you wrote was this one, which is Summiting Everest.
Yep.
And in each of these books, you talk about a principle that a principle or a trait or a habit that somebody can actually incorporate into their life for 30 days.
Exactly.
And then the next book, tell me about the next one that you're writing or you have written.
The next book right now is part of the 7 Summits to Success, and this one's called Everest Becoming or Being Unstoppable. The next one in the series of the 7 that I climbed them, they're coming out in the order that I climbed them, is Kilimanjaro Into the Self. So Everest talks about how you begin with the end in mind, and you believe in what you're doing, put the hard work in there, and have a very detailed picture of what your goals are. And then Into the Self, Kilimanjaro Into the Self, it's all about your values and how you can use your value base to accomplish what you want to do. So you don't have that dissonance. You know, say you don't value money, your motivation is altruistic. And if you're all of a sudden going after money, so this is what you want to do, you're going to have some discord in your life. So it helps people find their values and helps them keep them on their own personal path. And it doesn't tell people A plus B equals C, how to do exactly this, because everybody's different. Everybody's driven by different things. But if you have C, this can give you A plus B.
Okay. So on the horizon, what is your next Everest to conquer?
Marriage? I actually proposed to my fiance on a satellite phone from the North Pole. She said yes.
She did.
She did.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you. And actually, a funny story. I got back down to Norway, and I was talking to her from the hotel. Like, babe, make sure, don't tell your parents. I want to ask them permission first, out of respect for your culture and your family. And she said, they already know. Like, what do you mean they already know? Apparently they knew I was going to make it to the North Pole, and when I called in and asked her for her hand in marriage, her family was there, and she had me on speakerphone. I just wanted to say, hey, well, they thought I was just going to say, hey, I'm at the North Pole. It was like, hey, you want to get married? Everybody was there, so they all knew. But I'm working on a bunch of other things right now, and I think the biggest one, the books, Everest, Kilimanjaro, just the treks that anybody can do. And I'm also branding myself as the expert in helping cancer survivors become more.
It's a very, very noble cause.
Thank you.
Both the marriage as well as
Thanks.
helping cancer survivors become the fullest that they can. I mean, that's incredible.
Thanks. And it's not for everybody. People are just fine being a survivor. People don't want to talk about it. Whatever's good for that person is fine for them. There's no judgment at all. But people who want to go do something extraordinary, and for that person, that extraordinary might be just running a 5K.
Yeah.
Whatever it might be, whatever that person's goal is.
Well, Sean, thank you for sharing. It's an amazing story. I know that I read that your series of motivational speaking that you do around the country, you've been ranked the 8 most inspiring speakers. Yeah,
right.
So that was impressive. So well, thank you for focusing that towards such a wonderful cause.
My pleasure. Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you.